Thanks for tuning in to the Women's Vibrancy Code, a podcast dedicated to helping women move from exhausted to energized, balance their hormones, and feeling turned on by their life, their lover, and themselves. I'm your host, Maraya Brown. I'm a Yale and functional medicine trained women's health expert, midwife, mom, keynote speaker, and self-made entrepreneur. I'm the founder of my signature program, the Women's Vibrancy Code. So sit back, relax, and let's chat about your energy, hormones, libido, and embracing your feminine power. Oh, and you might want to have pen and paper to take some notes on some of these episodes. Welcome to the Women's Vibrancy Code podcast, where I'm committed to bringing you the tools, insights, and experts to help you thrive in your body, your energy, and your life. I'm Maraya Brown. Since January of 2022, I've released weekly episodes filled with powerful conversations and expert insights. I can't wait to continue this journey with you. And as we head towards 2025, it feels like the perfect time to revisit some of the most impactful, top listened to episodes from the past 2 years. From guest experts like Allison Armstrong, diving deep into relationships and core values, to Dr. Vincent Pedre sharing cutting edge wisdom on gut health. These episodes are packed with the gold you've been asking for. We've covered everything from menstrual rhythms and hormonal balance to unpacking the big questions around passion, connection, and libido. And trust me, you don't want to miss the episode on DHEA, your brain on the pill. This podcast is for the visionary woman who's ready to feel spectacular, take full ownership of her health, and boldly reject the status quo. If you're tired of quick fixes and Band-Aid solutions, you're in the right place. So enjoy these powerful episodes as we wrap up 2024 and get ready for even more in 2025. Thank you for being here, and let's keep thriving together. I want to talk with everyone about depression and brain fog from the perspective of nutrition. Okay, so this is one of those you're going to want to take out your notepad and take notes. I'm actually going to get into the nitty gritty of some very specific action steps that you can take for those of you that find yourself feeling sad, feeling dull, feeling like there's lack of motivation in your life, like you want to get off the couch. You want that you'd be served to go out and socialize and be out in the world. You know that there are things in your life that you used to love to do, but all of a sudden things just feel a little bit dull, feel a little bit sad. Maybe they feel a lot sad. Maybe over the last couple of years in the midst of the pandemic, there have even been moments of suicidal ideation. Let's hope not. And then the brain fog thing, I just want to tie in how that's also relevant in the context of this conversation. And for those that know me, I'm generally going to always go about this from the perspective of what can we change in regard to what goes into our mouth, right? What's going in and out of our eyes, in and out of our heart, right? So yes, I'm a Yale trained nurse practitioner, functional medicine trained. And so the perspective for today is going to be what can we change with nutrition, supplementation, and mindset. So a lot of what I'm going to be talking about comes from Dr. Drew Ramsey, who's the assistant clinical professor of psychiatry at Columbia University and founded the Brain Food Clinic in New York City. He wrote a book, Eat to Beat Depression and Anxiety, Nourish Your Way to Better Mental Health in 6 Weeks. I'll admit I haven't read the book myself, but I did a bit of a deep dive and I listened to some interviews with him and I just find it fascinating. So he's worth checking out if you find yourself leaning in. So what I want to say out loud is depression is the most disabling illness in the world. Okay. It is in the way of our vibrant life and it is real and it is rampant and it's caused by many things. Okay. And research is solid that we know food is medicine, okay? And there is a thing called nutritional psychiatry, which has made leaps and bounds for us to better understand how can we address depression from the perspective of actually changing our foundational nutrition. So like I said, get ready, take some notes. You might want to listen to this a couple times. I'm not your provider, but I am a provider out in the world. I encourage you to ensure that you are reaching out to mental health providers, okay? If you are really struggling with depression, this is not something to try to tackle alone, okay? And medication is not all bad, okay? Pharmaceuticals have their role, and for many individuals, it saves their life, okay? We can talk about ways to bolster and subsidize those medications. You can maybe explore with your mental health provider ways to titrate down and off of those medications, or in some scenarios, delay starting the medications and instead really tackling it from a nutritional standpoint. So what I'll be talking about today is more from a nutritional standpoint. I also want to say out loud that often when we hear about nutrition, it's all about the things to take out. And yes, there are many pro-inflammatory foods that you would value from taking out, but it's also what do we then replace it with? Okay. And can we change the mindset? This is not about, oh, I'm depriving myself. I can't have these XYZ things anymore. It's that I am choosing to eat differently because I'm choosing that I want to feel good. I want to feel vibrant. I want to feel happy. Okay. I want to feel like there is joy infused into my day and time with my friends and playing music and actually enjoying my life. Okay. So one of the things that I really enjoyed that Dr. Ramsey specified is that foods are kind of in two different categories. It's either foods that are going to feed the gut and decrease inflammation, or foods or activities that put the brain in grow mode. Okay, so if we think about it from those two perspectives, either feeding the gut and decreasing inflammation, or putting the brain in grow mode. Okay, so when we think about the gut, we think about the microbiome. Okay, we are 10% human cells, 90% are human microbiome. There is a gut-brain axis. The gut is the new brain. Okay, it is vital. And we know that there are specific scenarios in our gut microbiome that directly impact mood. We also know that 90% of our serotonin is produced in a healthy gut. Okay, so we have to look at foundational gut well-being and also decreasing overall inflammation. And I want to say out loud that the inflammation and poor microbiome really does get in the way, and it gets in the way of our focus. And so the reason I tie brain fog into this is if your gut microbiome is off, if you are someone who's struggling with leaky gut, if you have high inflammation in your body, it will show up as aches and pains and lack of energy as well as brain fog. And so is it depression? Is it lack of energy? Is it depression or is it brain fog? Is it feeling dull and not wanting to be out in the world? Or is it really that we just need to ramp up those healthy gut microbes and get you feeling spectacular again? So inflammation plays a big role in the midst of this. I also want to say out loud that the adrenals are a factor. So when we are in hypervigilance, that's usually more in the anxiety side, but we're in that hypervigilant state, worried, anxious, we're in fight, flight, or freeze. Okay, and often when we're spending more of our time in fight, flight, or freeze, we will increase inflammation in the body for lots of reasons, and our gut health will plummet. Okay, because remember, if we're in fight, flight, or freeze, the body is in survival. Okay, so our gut well-being becomes less significant, less relevant. Okay, so let's get into some specific solutions, and I'm just going to bounce around a little bit. So one of the things from what he was saying from a nutritional psychiatry perspective is some quick shortcuts, like some quick superfoods, some ways to get high density, high nutrition into our body to start addressing the decrease in inflammation, turning the gut microbiome on. And some simple things to do are simply making more soups, more smoothies, right? There's so much that we can sneak into our soups and smoothies. You can do a couple handfuls of dark leafy greens. I always buy my dark leafy greens in bulk at Costco. I get home, throw them right into the freezer so that way they're staying fresh. They get all crumbly and frozen, but it doesn't matter. I'm not eating them as salads. I'm throwing them in my soups. I'm throwing them in my smoothies, right? You can sneak all sorts of superfoods and seeds and nuts and sprouts and healthy protein powders into those smoothies and into your soups. Any of the leftover vegetables that weren't consumed the day before, your leafy greens, your garlic, your ginger, lots of spices, lots of bone broth, right? There's a lot of nutritional density that we can sneak in there. And that goes a long way. So what you're hopefully going to hear from me is that I'm not going to be recommending a whole lot of isolated, fragmented vitamins. I mean, first of all, I'm not recommending anything specifically for you because I'm not your provider. But what I want you to hear loud and clear is we do not have a vitamin deficiency as a society. I believe we have a whole food deficiency. So how can we go to the basics of nutritional support to help our mood and go back to whole foods? So watercress is a power food. You've already heard me say leafy greens, your powdered greens, whether it's chlorella or spirulina or various powdered greens that you can buy. I'm a big fan of Juice Plus as a supplemental source of additional fruits, vegetables, and berries, and how cool that you can get them in capsule form. It's simple. And the water, the sugar, and the salt are all removed. So now you don't have to worry about the glycemic load from the fruit, although fruit is not all bad. Okay. What I want you to hear loud and clear, if there's nothing else, is we need every color every day. All right. If you can sit down at a meal and look down, we want at least 3 colors. Your whites and your yellows and your browns don't count. Okay. So your red bell peppers, your red beans. Okay. The other thing I want you to hear is B12 is crucial in the depression conversation. So what are sources of B12? The best ones would be mussels, clams, and oysters. If you're one of those who's allergic to shellfish, trout, salmon, if you don't like fish at all, eggs, okay? And if all of those don't work for you well, then reach out to your provider and say, I think I would like some extra B12. What are some other ways that I can get it, okay? For some, they say wild salmon, yum, that sounds amazing, but it's too expensive. Well, here's the deal. We either pay now or we pay later. And generally when we pay later, we pay a lot more. Number one. And number two is you can't shop at the dollar menu expecting to look like $1 million. And with that being said, eating healthy does not have to be expensive, okay? So if wild salmon is too much, go get canned salmon, all right? The price is lower. Sure, it's not ideal. Sometimes we're getting our BPAs in the plastic, but still find ways to get it into your body that does work within your budget. And one of the things that I loved, and I actually put this in the show notes, there was a trial done called the SMILES trial. And they looked at individuals with moderate to severe depression over 12 weeks' time. And they did some nutritional education and nutritional changes. And what was mind-blowing was in this study, it showed 32% that ended up in full remission. Full remission, my friends, taking some of these recommendations that I'm going to be speaking about. I've already spoken about some, and implementing them. Okay, going back to the basics of actually preparing your own food, getting in a wide variety of produce, feeding that healthy microbiome and helping the brain grow. And how fascinating. The other thing that I found very compelling is that when they looked at the individuals from the SMILES trial over time, the reduction in their overall food budget. So what Dr. Ramsey specified was that what they found was the individuals that continued this lifestyle, kind of like a Mediterranean diet, they ended up saving themselves $1,000 a year in a reduction in their food budget. Okay. So if you're already someone saying, oh, I want to eat better, but it's too expensive, I would encourage you to shift that a little bit. Okay, can you insert a different story? Can you see it from a different perspective? Because believe me, it is absolutely possible, especially when you're making lots of stews and soups and you're using lentils and beans and rice, right? There's ways for us to get creative. So let's talk a little bit more about the gut microbiome. Everybody has pretty much heard about the gut microbiome and probiotics. Okay, probiotics are awesome. My preference is that you're going to get your probiotics through foods such as your kimchi, your sauerkraut, non-dairy kefir, yogurt, kombucha, miso, tempeh, stuff like that. Okay, so now we're introducing positive bacteria into that gut microbiome, okay? But there's also something that I think is even more important, and that's your prebiotics. Prebiotics come from plants, and they help the good bacteria do a better job at what that bacteria is supposed to be doing, okay? So it's things that tend to be sometimes gas producing, like your artichoke, your chicory root, your garlic, your onion, your beans, your kind of fiber-rich foods, okay? So we're talking about feeding the gut, decreasing inflammation, okay? And then I also mentioned putting the brain in grow mode. Okay, so how do we actually reduce the likelihood of developing depression? Some key things there: cinnamon, turmeric, quality fats like olive oil, coconut oil, avocado oil, our nuts, our seeds, our sprouts, but also thinking beyond just serotonin. There's a hormone called BDNF, and it influences the brain cells reaching out and making new connections. Okay, so that is in the context of moving our body, exercising, making connections with loved ones, playing music, painting. Okay, resting in pleasure. You've heard me talk about neuroplasticity. When we start practicing gratitude, when we start getting into a practice of taking a pause in something being pleasurable. That smells good. That tastes good. That feels good. Wow, that looks beautiful. Just for 20 seconds to rest in it, we actually increase our neuroplasticity. And in that moment, we're turning the brain on to grow. And in that context, the brain is repairing, okay? So what we're looking for is, how do we ignite the brain? How do we bring vibrancy back to your world, both from a nutritional standpoint as well as lifestyle modification? Okay, so I talked about the gut. I talked about fermented foods, prebiotics. I mentioned powdered greens, a variety of color, right? I mentioned whole food supplementation. Juice Plus is one of my favorites. I've taken Juice Plus for now, I think it's 16 or 17 years. It has been in all three of my children's veins since they were conceived. The research out there is phenomenal. And it's so great that you can get 30 different fruits, vegetables, and berries that have been tested to be herbicide, pesticide free, picked at their peak of ripeness, pulverized, and then dehydrated, and we get to take them in capsule form. So that, if nothing else, it's spectacular to see what changes in the clients that I see just adding that in. I've mentioned oils, so your quality omegas. If you'd like to get a fish oil, my favorite is Nordic Naturals. If you would like to bypass the fish and instead go to a vegan omega source, the Juice Plus vegan omegas are a great option. And going back to quality fats, your nuts, your seeds, right? Your hemp seeds, your chia seeds, your quality oils in the home. So my preference is that maybe you're going to take red meat out, replace it with a more lean meat. Take your canola oil out and replace it with your avocado oil, your olive oil, your coconut oil, your MCT oil, your CBD oil. Okay, can we introduce quality fats into the body that are actually going to feed the brain and decrease inflammation? For some who work in my infrastructure, if you're already seeing a functional medicine provider, you might ask for a GI map test. That's actually taking your stool and really looking at your gut microbiome, and we can see, there is where maybe there's a predisposition and some answers towards why you're feeling down or you're feeling sad. Okay, so I just want you to know that there's lots of answers, lots of solutions out there. Vitamin D, as in dog, is another one. It's not a vitamin, it's actually a hormone. And some say the research is controversial. I find it to be significant. Okay, I think most of us are deficient in vitamin D, partially because we just spend too much time indoors with artificial light. And when we're outside, we're wearing sunblock and covering up for good reason. And we need more vitamin D. So if you look at the most recent vitamin D level that was ordered in your yearly labs, you'll look at your labs and look at 25 hydroxy vitamin D. My preference is that it's going to be between 60 and 80. Normal for most labs will go down as low as 23, and maybe your provider said, oh, it's in normal range. My friend, add in some extra vitamin D, okay? And let's see if we can get that vitamin D level up to between 60 and 80, especially if you're one of those that's struggling with depression, sadness, lack of motivation to go out in the world, lack of motivation to socialize, okay? Okay, a couple other pointers. A lot of this is solution-oriented, and hopefully you're enjoying this. When you're at the grocery store, shop around the perimeter, okay? Just an easy, simple tip. Try to stay away from the center of the grocery store. That's generally where you're going to get into your processed foods, your candies, okay? The more we can shop around the perimeter, the more likely we're going to stay in those healthy things that are going to keep us, our bodies really working well, okay? Filter your water. A lot of the inflammation that is in our body is coming from the water we're drinking, the air we're breathing, the stress that we're experiencing, the fast food that we're eating, the coffee that we're drinking too much of, the alcohol that we're drinking too much of, right? So starting out with filtering your water. I use the Berkey filter. I love it. When we do road trips, we even put it in the car and take it with us wherever we go. And that way we know that we're getting that water filtered. I want to really encourage you not to skip meals. So in the context of even just irritability, even if you're one of those that tends to get irritated, annoyed, angry easily, often it's our blood sugars. We need to ensure that we're not skipping meals and we're getting quality fiber, protein, and fat consistently throughout the day. And for the women that are listening, we often forget. We go all day. We focus on everyone else all day. And sometimes we need those reminders. So while I say that, I'm going to take a sip of my water. So shop the perimeter. Don't skip meals. Every color, every day. Ensure that with your meals, you're getting quality fat, fiber, and protein. And then move our bodies. Okay, it's really important that we're moving, we're getting exercise. That does not mean, I spoke with someone today who's feeling a lack of motivation. She says, I know I just need to get back in the gym. Okay, I want to say this out loud. Sometimes you think you're doing well and you're like, I'm going to start running again. I'm going to get back in the gym and lift weights. And I think sometimes we're actually doing our body more harm than good, particularly if you've had high inflammation over your time and your adrenals are exhausted. We need to allow a little bit more gentleness in how we start moving our bodies. And so you might want to listen to the podcast episode I did on kind of tracking within a 28-day cycle and starting the process of thinking about different ways to move our bodies based on where we are in a moon cycle, a 28-day cycle. Okay, if you're in your ovulatory time, yeah, girl, go get it. Go on a run, go lift weights heavy, go do a big climb. If you're about to bleed in your PMS time, that's time to be a little bit more gentle, okay? Maybe that's time to do a nice quiet hike in nature, or stay at home and do a Pilates or yoga class at home, and maybe you're feeling a little bit less social. Either way, ensuring that we're moving our bodies on a regular basis, so vital. Even if it's just a 7-minute workout, or you put on a couple of fun songs and you dance it out in the living room. I love to dance it out with my kids. I'll even get a can of beans and just put them in my hand, and I'm getting some weight bearing something, right? The other thing from a lifestyle perspective is trying to make cooking fun. Okay? We're trying to bring life back to your body, life back to your psyche. Okay? I mentioned infusing more joy into how we're doing things. And so because this is more from a nutritional standpoint, talking about brain fog and sadness and depression, the more we can try to make cooking fun, we're infusing more joy. We're sending that joy into the food that we're eating, and we're going to try new things. We're going to bring playfulness into it. Maybe you're going to put on a fun blouse. Maybe you're going to put on fun music. You're going to give your kids a job. You're going to try something new, try some new recipe. And as you're along this journey of trying a more anti-inflammatory diet, allow it to be playful, okay? Allow the idea of not just what you're eating, but how you're eating it to have the overall undertone of joy. How you're preparing your food to have an overall undertone of joy. So that it's not like, oh man, I'm doing this new thing and I have to cut out all these processed foods and I can't go get fast food anymore. And now I'm spending all this time with food prep. Well, how is that serving you? Versus, I have the esteemed privilege of really infusing love and joy into my food and doing it from a very conscious place. And I'm doing this because I want to feel spectacular. I want to feel engaged in my life. I want to feel engaged in the relationships that I have. Okay. And for some of you, that talking about engaged in the life that you have and engaged in your relationships, attending an in-person women's retreat. Doop, doop. Yes, I'm hosting one in June. So if you are listening to this or watching this before early June, please reach out to me. I am hosting an in-person women's retreat, and it's all about women regaining their power, bringing joy back into your life, bringing connection back into your life, and reviving the woman that you thought you would be at this point in your life. So you can look the lioness in the mirror and go out and tackle life in a big, big way. It's me and other amazing facilitators in a beautiful, beautiful retreat center in Southern Oregon and spectacular food. So anyway, would love to hear from you. If you're like, oh, really? In-person retreat? Let's go. Okay, let's talk a little bit about family history and reduction of risk. There's many people that say, my mom suffered with depression, my grandma suffered with depression, my aunt suffered with depression, it was just inevitable. Or I have a genetic predisposition. Okay, yes, some of that is relevant. Okay, but our family history and our genetic code is not permanent. It does not define us. Your past diagnoses also do not define you. So maybe you have been diagnosed with depression in the past. Maybe you've been diagnosed with high blood pressure. Maybe you've been diagnosed with fibroids, diabetes, whatever it may be. That does not mean that it has to be something you identify with as your permanent state of being, okay? Here's the deal. A caterpillar and a butterfly have the same exact DNA. It's a different expression of that DNA based on lifestyle choices. Caterpillar chose to go into the chrysalis, become goo, come out the other end as a butterfly. So are you just putting your belly up and saying, this is something I was predisposed for, I don't have any control over it, it just is what it is? Or are you continuing to take steps, okay, continuing to be in self-advocacy? Because what the research shows is getting the right mental health support, sometimes bringing in medication, but oftentimes nutritional support, changing what is going in your mouth and how it's going into your mouth and how it's being prepared. Okay, I'm wrapping this up, I promise. So you know me, if you're in my infrastructure at all, I am all about hormones, right? I support women with their hormonal balance. I help women move from exhausted to energized, balance their hormones, and feel turned on by their life, their lover, and themselves. So let's talk a little bit about depression and brain fog in the context of hormones, because there's a lot that changes. Maybe you're postpartum, maybe you're pregnant, maybe you're in perimenopause. If you don't know what that is, that's usually between age 35 and 52. That kind of like other end of the bookends, kind of like puberty all over again as you're starting the transition into menopause. Maybe you're already in menopause, okay? Our roles in society are changing. And sometimes we're struggling with, who am I? Where's my place? Right? Our roles in relationships are shifting. Sometimes in the midst of those transitions, we stop working or we go back to work, and we have our children, we don't have our children, someone else is raising our children. And that has a big impact on our overall confidence and has our overall place in the world. Plus, as all of those changes are happening in a chronology of our life, there's a lot changing from hormonal perspective as well. So what I want you to know is estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, serotonin, oxytocin, dopamine, endorphins, they all play a big factor in the midst of our experience of feeling happy, feeling joyful, feeling a sense of belonging, feeling connected, sleeping well, feeling turned on by our lives. Okay. If you are in the throes of motherhood with lots of little babies and you're breastfeeding and you're feeling overtouched and the responsibilities at home feel overwhelming. Okay. You are needed tremendously, and give yourself some grace. Reach out to someone and get some support. Okay. From mental support perspective, nutritional support perspective, personalized supplementation, hormonal support, okay? And through a functional medicine lens, we get to look at your gut health and your adrenal health and your thyroid health, okay? Sometimes it's just that your thyroid is kind of sluggish and somebody's ordering the wrong tests or they're looking at the tests the wrong way, okay? So in that scenario, a Dutch Plus is a great test to look quantifiably at your hormones and your adrenals. But you need to make sure that you have a provider that really understands that test, knows how to read it. Okay, last two things. I mentioned a Mediterranean diet. I want to make sure for those of you that don't really know what the Mediterranean diet is. Broad strokes, you're eliminating fast food and processed foods, right? You're eating more fruits, vegetables, berries, grains, legumes, sprouts, nuts, seeds, right? We're swapping out fats. I already mentioned a few examples. You're reducing your intake of fatty red meats and instead replacing them with lean meats, your fish, your salmon, your mussels, your clams, your oysters, right? Maybe some eggs for those of you that can handle eggs, especially if they're free range, hormone and antibiotic free. Make sure you're not drinking your calories, okay? So hopefully when you're drinking a beverage, it's ideally water, filtered water. Okay, I'm a big fan of adaptogen elixirs. You can bring in those adaptogen elixirs, and with that, you're getting a protein, a fat, and your adaptogens. Okay, so that way you're not drinking your calories. Instead, you're eating your calories. They're adding to your body. They're feeding your gut microbiome. They're decreasing inflammation. Okay, they're turning your brain on so that it can grow. And it's fascinating and spectacular to see when all of a sudden the lights turn on. The lights turn on and life turns on. And now all of a sudden, there's more motivation to go out in the world. And you find yourself feeling more engaged and doing creative things and feeling joy again, right? And then sharing as many meals with others as possible. Part of that Mediterranean diet is infusing joy and pleasure into our days and how we are preparing our meals. And if you're crunched for time, do meal prep one day a week, okay? Make a big pot of stew, make a big smoothie, sip on it throughout the day, okay? I mentioned some great supplements such as Juice Plus, sources of B12 vitamins, and then I mentioned a little bit around hormones, so dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins. Stick with me. Oof, we're getting into a lot here because it's real, it's common, okay? And it's important. Once again, what did I say at the beginning? The most disabling illness in the world is depression. Okay, SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, are in our water. They're prescribed. So many people are on antidepressants, okay? And I'm not saying that they're all bad, but I am saying if you're someone who's feeling sad, feeling what might be diagnosed as depression, and you've gone in, has your provider really looked at your thyroid, your vitamin D level, your hormones? Have they started with addressing your gut health and your adrenal well-being and decreasing overall inflammation and giving you recommendations around what you can change in regard to what and how you're eating? And if not, if all they're doing is saying, here's a prescription, how is that working out for you? Okay, if that's a solution for you and you're like, I'm fine, okay, I wish you well. The women and the people that come into my world, my infrastructure, say, no, I don't want Band-Aid care. I want to look at the festering wound that's underneath that Band-Aid and actually get to the root cause. And I want to take ownership, and I really want to create change. Okay, so the last thing I'm ending with is these hormones, dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins. I'm just going to give a few key things that you can do in regard to lifestyle that can start turning on those hormones, okay? Turn on the lights, so to speak, so that you're feeling more excited about your life. So dopamine. Dopamine is the hormone of getting things done. It brings on productivity. It brings on motivation, okay? So complete a task. Write down a to-do list, complete a task, and mark off the line through that you completed the task. You get a dopamine hit, okay? Do some self-care activity. Celebrate yourself. Celebrate a little win, okay? Oxytocin. Oxytocin is the hormone of ecstasy, of falling deeply in love, of orgasm. It's at the highest when a woman gives birth so that she fully bonds and falls in love with that baby. Okay, so play with a dog, play with a baby, hold hands with someone, give someone else a compliment. If you have someone near you to get a hug, chest to chest, give someone a hug for 60 seconds. You get an oxytocin surge. Okay, serotonin. I already mentioned that 90% of our serotonin comes from our gut, so we need to address our healthy gut. Okay, serotonin is the hormone of feeling happy, feeling connected, feeling a sense of belonging in a community, feeling like I belong here. So meditate. Spend some time in nature. Okay, get some sun on your face. Lift your chin. So the act of just simply lifting your chin and turning your gaze up. Okay, and get some body movement in. And please listen to the other podcast on a 28-day cycle. So we know that maybe you're going to run, maybe you're going to go for a walk, maybe you're going to go for a swim. Okay, maybe it's going to be a mild hike, maybe it's going to be a vigorous hike. But I encourage you to allow yourself to adjust how you're doing that exercise based on where you are in a moon cycle. And then the last one is endorphins. Endorphins are our natural painkillers. They're the things that spike when you get a runner's high. Rather than hurting, you're like, yoo-hoo, right? The stories of somebody lifts a car off of somebody, I don't know if that's really true, but that's what I imagine. And the endorphins kick in and it doesn't hurt. Endorphins spike when a woman is in labor if she doesn't have an epidural, right? So now we're having that natural cocktail, so to speak, of hormones. So ways to bring up your endorphins: laugh. Laughter is also going to decrease your cortisol. So it's going to help your adrenal well-being and take you out of fight, flight, or freeze so that you can feel foundationally safe. Watch a comedy. Eat some dark chocolate. I said dark chocolate, right? And once again, move your body. One thing to take note of is nowhere in this entire time have I mentioned electronics. Nowhere in any of this have I mentioned go search Facebook or do a Google search, right? I think a lot of the time we zone out and remove ourselves and choose not to feel the feelings. And the ways that we do that is watching episodes, TV, scrolling through Facebook, scrolling through social media, okay? So I encourage you to give yourself a break from electronics, particularly if you're someone that struggles with depression, to raise your hand and say, I need some help, and know that you're not alone. It's common, but also know that there are lots of solutions. Okay, so thank you for your time. This has been a delight. Hopefully, you can take a pause. It's a lot of information. I know it's all important information, but I want you to just take a pause and think about what's one key takeaway here. Of everything that she just covered, what is one thing that I know that I can start doing tomorrow? One action step that I can take. Maybe you're even willing to say there's 3 action steps. So what are 3 action steps that you're willing to take that you know are going to start getting you on the trajectory of getting your gut microbiome rocking, your inflammation down, your brain in grow mode, more joy and passion in your life, right? More belonging and joy. I already mentioned joy, peace, time in nature, self-reflection. And once again, if you're someone who's really hungry for this and you're at a point in your life where you want to lean in, and hopefully we're at the end of the pandemic, but at least things have opened and now we're circling together and meeting in person. If you're someone who really feels fed by being with other women, I really do invite you to reach out to me and inquire about the in-person retreat, as long as you're listening to this before early June. I'm hosting an in-person retreat in Southern Oregon. It caps at 20 women. There's 12 spots left as of today. And we get to gather, we get to look at what are the parts of me that I'm ready to leave behind. When I look in the mirror and I go, that doesn't serve me anymore. And who do I want to be? What does the joy-filled, powerful version of me look like if I'm really going to look the lioness in the mirror and get ready for my big future? And I'm going to show myself, I'm going to gather with other women, I'm going to spend time in nature. I'm going to challenge myself a little bit physically. I'm going to eat spectacular food. And I'm also going to revive my passion. So it's me as well as other facilitators. I'm flying Eva Clay up, who's one of the team sexologists within my year-long program. She'll be coming up from LA and she'll be facilitating a revival of our suppressed sexual archetype. Okay, and all of that will happen in the midst of a 4-night, 3-day, full-on in-person women's retreat. So I invite you to reach out. Hopefully you have taken some notes, and maybe this is one of those you're going to want to watch again and think about, okay, there are some action steps that I can shift each and every day. I'm going to look up some new soup recipes. I'm going to start making smoothies. I'm going to add in a supplement. I'm going to focus on whole food supplementation, not just a shelf of vitamins. I want you to remember that your liver has more than 300 jobs every day that we know of. It's working so diligently, and we're grateful for all the stuff our liver is doing right under here, under your right rib cage. And every supplement that you're adding in is giving that liver an extra job. So are you just willy-nilly grabbing anything off the shelf because Dr. Google said so? Or are you taking whole food supplementation that you really know serves you? And it's personalized from the providers that you've seen that have given you some extra love and care. And it's uplifting your overall well-being. With that, thank you. I just love the opportunity. I see many of you watching live. And for those of you that are listening to this in the podcast, thank you for being a listener. Please share this with a friend. And until next time.